Welcome to Unfiltered Summit Sisters. I'm Gina.
And I'm Julia.
We are two ride-or-die best friends who are paving the path for what true, authentic relationships look like.
We're facing hardships head-on, having real, uncensored conversations, supporting each other's growth, and shining a light on true, raw healing.
We are navigating the world the best we know how.
Having a hell of a time doing it.
Laughing every step of the way.
Through the rain
and sunshine.
This is Canyon Culture.
Welcome back to Unfiltered Summit Sisters. We are trying to will the sun out in my front yard.
Let's go.
Let's go. But today we have a topic that I think you and I used to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. And I think we're both feeling very, very different about it. And it's boundaries. So buckle in. Boundaries. Buckle up. Because some people are afraid of boundaries.
Let's go.
Let's go. So, why were you so afraid of boundaries before, Julia?
Oh my gosh.
Tell us about.
I had none.
Right.
Not sure I even knew what the word meant.
You weren't allowed to have any.
Right, but I think that that didn't stem just from my marriage. It stemmed all the way back to childhood.
Okay.
So the way that I was raised was that children were less than.
Okay.
We were supposed to listen to all adults at all times. Do not talk back to an adult. Do not, we had no autonomy. Is that the right word that I'm looking for? We were just children. And so from the very beginning, I had no boundaries.
Well, you were meant to be seen, not heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my only job was to listen and obey and get good grades and make sure when we were out in public, we were acting the right way. And those were the only things that mattered.
And that did not translate well into your marriage.
Oh, no. Nope. It definitely did not.
Not with a narcissist.
Not well. He latched onto that real fast.
I think that is one, I think from what I'm remembering from some of the studies that I've done about narcissistic abuse, mm-hmm. that is some of the things that is attractive to a narcissist is the people pleasing and the lack of boundaries.
Weird.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, sweet. I can mold this one.
Right. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, boundaries are super scary. I learned not that long ago why boundaries were so scary because I was dating a guy and there were things happening that I didn't like and they weren't big. Mm-hmm. It was not even it was seriously not a big deal. And I was like, I can't voice that opinion. That's scary. And you're like, what are you talking?
Right.
And I realized I was like, oh, in my marriage, at the beginning when I did set boundaries, they were not respected. There was no space for them, but then they were also ridiculed. So I quickly learned mm-hmm. to not figure out what my wants and needs were.
Right.
So as I'm growing and healing and figuring out my wants and needs, I'm like, oh, these don't matter in a relationship. So don't voice it.
I remember in my marriage, literally just now as we're talking, I remember trying to set a boundary of I did not want him meeting with women alone for very good reasons. Very good black and white reasons that we won't get into right now.
Yeah.
And I was completely ridiculed for that. Well, why do you feel that? You're so insecure. This has everything to do about you.
Yeah.
And that boundary was very much needed and never followed. But I remember being ridiculed for it, right? And it was all about me and me being insecure and me not being enough and it's all in your head and you're crazy.
It's the gaslighting.
You're too sensitive and
it's the gaslighting of what is wrong? Why would you?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when the boundary is trying to be set and the narcissist is trying to not have the boundary set. Mm-hmm. That's when the gaslighting is real strong because they're just like, this is so not a big deal. Why would you even need this? Blah, blah, whatever.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a million examples and I don't think we need to go into them, but there was so much of that in both of our relationships that it made us, I was already a people pleaser, but I think that stemmed me to be even more of a people pleaser because then I no longer sought out my own wants and needs. I was always finding my value in other people mm-hmm. and saying, what does Julia need me to be for me to be valuable in her life instead mm-hmm. of setting boundaries and saying I'm valuable right here. And if you want to be in my life, here's how you need to interact with me. Mm-hmm. So that was, our marriages really messed with our heads there.
Yeah.
But as we were preparing for this podcast, we were talking about boundaries with each other. And we're like, do we set boundaries with each other? And you literally asked, do we have a toxic relationship?
I was like, healthy relationships have boundaries. What are our boundaries? And we're sitting here trying to come up with them, and we can't come up with them. I'm like, oh my God, we're toxic. What is happening?
Immediately we need to break up. We're toxic because we have no boundaries. But as we were discussing it, what I kind of realized is that there are times where it's not that, like, I guess in my head, setting a boundary because of my marriage was such a big conversation and it was such a big topic and it was scary and intense and like, oh my gosh, I have this thing I need to say, but I don't have the safety or the space to do that. Mm-hmm. Where you and I have put so much time and effort into this relationship where it has always been a safe space for us, that instead of saying like, here's my boundary, I think more often what happens is we know each other's heart and you're like, hey, I know this is an issue for you. So like, how do you want me to do this?
Yes.
And I love that because and that's why we can't remember them, because we're not, it's not a big conversation like, Julia. And so more often than not, I feel like what I do have to ask you for is like, hey, you show up for me, but I need you to show up this way. And you're like, okay, yeah, done. And that's still scary to me.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like a boundary. It's like the opposite of a boundary. It's like, show up here, come this way.
Well, so we were doing a whole lot of dinners together. We were doing more dinners together than apart, right? Yeah. And then you kind of went into this season of needing to establish your own family and your own independence. And so you guys were eating dinner with us a lot less. And I would ask sometimes and you would say no. And that never felt bad. It never felt negative. But that kind of felt like you setting a boundary of going like, we're trying to establish something in our family right now, which is going to mean that we need some more time with just us. And that,
what a good example.
Thank you. I just pulled
it out. Good job. Look at us.
I know.
We're not toxic. Yes, we can still be friends.
Yes,
we made it. But I think that's what it is. It wasn't a big conversation. It was just we're learning how to stand on our own 2 feet. And I almost wonder if us becoming the women we are now and doing it together is kind of like when you marry young and you and your spouse mature together. It's hard and it's difficult, but you're doing it together.
Right.
And I feel like we've kind of done that. We've done a lot of this maturing in our mid-30s. It's fine. But we've done it together. And so it doesn't feel big and heavy because as we're doing it new together, we're healing together. Yes. And so that we're here.
Yes. Because I think in you setting those boundaries for your family time was nothing but positive. I didn't have a second thought about it. I was like, that's awesome. She's doing exactly what she feels led to do right now. But me 10 years ago would not have thought that.
Yeah.
Well, why do they not want to eat dinner with us anymore? Did I say something to offend her? Did I do something? Did my kids
We don't
do
actually
something?
like your cooking. That's what it is. You're a horrible cook. Just so you know, she is the opposite of a horrible cook.
So much so, my children don't ever want to move out. So
I don't want to move out.
But that would have been me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And we've grown and healed so much from that I can definitely see where we do actually set boundaries. But because we've worked so hard and grown so much in that area, it doesn't feel big or heavy or like, here is a boundary. It doesn't.
Flag in the ground.
Right.
But so this is another part of it. It's that we have both grown. So on the receiving end of a boundary, you're not feeling the heaviness of it. And I think another great example is Shirley. Is because, and this one, like, I had to be more in my head as far as like, no, this is a good thing. But we had an issue we had to talk about. There was a thing she came and she was like, we need to talk about this so that this doesn't hurt our friendship. And I was like, because I had done enough healing, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, and got defensive and got like, no. I was like, yes, let's do this because I want to have a relationship with you and your family that is clean, that is where I know where to step, where I know where I'm welcome, where I know that I'm in a space that you want me to be in. And that's what I learned about boundaries with her specifically, because it was, I don't want to say dramatic, but it was more of a conversation we had to have and less of a just in passing, oh yeah, we're just going to do dinner by ourselves. It was more of a set conversation, and it was a new territory for both her and I think it was so good and healing, but it taught me how excited I get for boundaries, because then with that conversation, I knew exactly how to behave that would make her comfortable and I could be comfortable, because it went both ways, right? It's got to go both ways. So for us to be able to have a conversation where it's like, this is what I need from you and this is what I need from you, and it's like, done. Easy.
Because when you're sitting down to discuss boundaries with someone, let's say someone is having the conversation with you and setting boundaries with you, it is not about you.
Mm-mm.
It's about them. It's about them honoring themselves.
Yes.
It doesn't have to do with you.
No. Which is great though. And I think that's where you and I miss a lot, is that we didn't know how to seek that in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We got squashed so much where it was like, not only am I not respecting your boundaries, but you're an idiot for having this boundary or
Yes.
having this thought, that we went, oh, well, we're not going to explore that anymore. And so when I was dating that boy, I was like, I can't explore that. That's scary. Right? But yeah, hearing Shirley talk about what she needed from me in our friendship, it was about her. And it was so easy for me to be like, whatever you need to be comfortable here.
Yeah.
And none of the things she asked for, I felt like I had to come back with, well, that doesn't work for me. Here's a boundary I need to set. It was, but I want to make sure that in my relationships, I am prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that it was this, and she even started it with like with talking about the podcast and just this idea of we hear each other's hearts. And I love that that was how we started it. The conversation was like, hear my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, easy, absolutely. And I love that saying that we have, because it just drops all defensiveness.
Yes. It lets us say it messy.
That's
right?
what it
we
does.
We don't have to be so, it doesn't,
I love
it
that.
takes the heaviness out of it, because we don't have to be so focused on saying the exact right words at the exact right timing.
Yes.
We give each other grace and freedom to be messy and hear my heart underneath my messy words.
I freaking love that. Knowing that they don't have to say the right words, that I understand where they're coming from, and that they love me and I love them. So even if it doesn't hit me right,
mm-hmm.
I need to dig deeper, knowing who they are, knowing where they come from, what are they trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it so that the boundary setting isn't scary, isn't hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sometimes still is, but I'm just saying in general, like with you and I, it really isn't. Mm-hmm. And even if it is a little bit more of an intense situation like Shirley, there was nothing like the end. There was tears and there was hugs and there's greatness. And it was such a great learning experience for me to be able to do that. And I think it was a great experience for Shirley to be able to say those things. Mm-hmm. And anyway, and it's something that I hope in all of my relationships is an open conversation. Mm-hmm. Because I guess this is the thing. If you were to have a relationship with somebody and you find out 10 years down the road that you were doing something that just bothered them so much and they never said anything, don't you wish that you knew earlier on, because you could have changed that and it wasn't a big deal?
Absolutely.
Or had a discussion saying, you know what, this is important to me and this is why, and then it changes how they view it?
Yes. I don't want somebody seeing me walk up to the porch and being like, oh, she's here, she's going to do this or that. Like, no, I would much rather have them approach me.
A respectful conversation. Mm-hmm. I love it. But here's the hard part. There are people in our lives, because yes, it went great with you. It goes great with Shirley. And if one of you didn't do that, we'd probably be like, all right, well, if you're not going to respect my boundaries, peace, get out of here.
Right.
But there are people in our lives we can't do that with.
That's the harder one for me.
That is, well, I mean, I hope it's a harder one for everybody, because as much as I love this idea of you're not going to respect my boundaries, bye.
Throw Jack.
Okay, so what are we doing with that? Because there's co-parents, there's employees, there's
children.
Oh my gosh, there's children, there's family members.
Yeah.
There's so many people in our lives that you can't cut out.
Right.
You, at least for some point of time, either you have to quit your job or you have to wait till the children grow up, or you have to deal with certain things that it's hard.
It's really hard.
So I will, like for me, co-parenting with my kids' dad is tricky. Is really tricky because I have to set boundaries and sometimes they're not respected.
Yeah, that's extremely hard. I haven't had to co-parent ever.
Yeah.
Until being with my boyfriend now, and co-parenting with his co-parents is a lot. Because setting boundaries is not respected.
Right.
And that's extremely difficult, because it's not like, oh, you didn't respect my boundaries, peace out. Like,
you're kind of stuck with them.
Yeah.
You have to make that. You have to make that work.
I'm very much in the raw space of learning how to do that right now, and that's really difficult. Yeah.
I would assume there's a lot of resetting of boundaries. There's a lot of adjusting and moving.
Yes.
Going, here's a boundary. It's not respected. Okay, so I'm going to counter. It's almost like chess.
Yes.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with resetting boundaries or changing boundaries until it gets to the point where everyone's doing things appropriately. Mm-hmm. But I think if we come into a relationship going, here's my set boundaries, this is it, it's not going to go well for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it is hard, and trying to figure out that and navigate I'm thinking about like coworkers where you don't have control over that and they're not setting your boundaries. You've got to adjust and shift and go, what different boundary can I set? How do I move this so I'm still protecting my peace? Because that's what boundaries are about, is protecting your peace.
Yes.
And protecting your energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about making that person do anything.
Agreed.
So it's hard.
Yeah, it is really difficult. And then with kids. Setting boundaries with kids is definitely not something that I ever really thought of.
Yeah.
When having kids, before having kids, whatever. I never really thought of that.
Yeah.
And I am definitely having to do that. So it looks different with different kids.
Yeah.
With my older ones, I've got older ones who are now driving and wanting to go and do all the things and be all the places. And I'm sitting up at 10:30 at night wanting to go to bed, and I can't because they're not home yet.
Yeah.
And I say yes way more than I say no. And so I am in the process of learning that we need to set some boundaries. I don't know exactly what those are yet, but discussing, praying, figuring out what boundaries need to be set there. And then it looks different with my youngest. My youngest is 6, and I love him to death, but he
don't stick your hand in the fire.
Well, and I feel like he uses physical touch as manipulation sometimes.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's so annoying.
I want a hug. Okay, but let me clarify. It's not just I want a hug once or twice a day. It's all the time.
I don't have any children like that.
Especially when he's told to go do something.
Exactly.
I got to do chores. I just need a hug first. I got to go do this. I want a hug first. I want a hug all the time.
Right, and so you're not wanting to deny the love, but you're also going,
right.
You can't just use this to get out of stuff.
Yes.
But I think what's good is as we're learning about boundaries and then we get to discuss it with our children and say, we're going to set this boundary. So with your teenagers, it may be, I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to say no. So maybe it's the numbers don't have to look the same, but I'm going to say no for every 3 yeses I give you because I need my sleep. And you explain that to them, which gives them a different experience than what you had growing up and what I had growing up. We're just blindly following what we're told to do.
Right.
And it's not like our kids need the explanation, but I think it helps them understand why we're saying what we're saying so that they can not only follow that rule, but then go, you know what, I bet that same issue applies over here too. So I'm going to make a different decision over here.
Right.
But then they're familiar with healthy boundary setting before they're adults.
Because they need to know how to do it too.
Because we went a whole long time not knowing how to do it, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
And we were terrified of it.
Yep.
So yeah, but I too had to set boundaries with some of my kids with the physical touch because all of my kids are super touchy, and there's one of me. And I get super, and they're little vampires. This is not filling my cup. A lot of their hugs is not filling of my cup.
They're sucking every ounce of life from us. I swear, if they could suck all of the blood out of us, they would suck all of it out except one drop so that one drop would replenish before they suck it all out again.
Well, I mean, they sucked all the calcium from our milk. So, I mean, they've already had practice for years.
True.
But there's like a meme or I don't know how scientifically accurate it is, but it says something like everybody needs 8 hugs a day to like function. And I was like, I am beyond depleted because I get 1,000 hugs, but they're taking more hugs. With every hug I give them, they take another hug. So I'm doubling every time.
Right.
So I've had to tell my kids, I'm like, we're learning about consent too, because I'm like, you need to ask for permission for a hug.
Yes.
When you just come into my space and give me a hug, it is very intense for me. And I have to explain it to them. I'm like, there's 4 of you. And if you all come at me like this, I'm overstimulated. And that doesn't work for me.
Weird.
And sometimes I have to say no. I'm like, you know what? Right now is not it. And they're like, okay. And it sucks because sometimes they walk away and they're so sad and I feel bad. But at the same time, I'm like, if I hug you right now, there's going to be so much anger in that hug. Pop your head off.
Trying to avoid that.
Which is, I mean, that's all little kid stuff. The kids and the teenagers is going to be more. And I do love the idea of having those conversations. So not because I feel like I am peers with my kids, but I want them to learn about boundaries and say, here's your needs, here's my needs. Here's your wants, here's my wants. We have to figure out them together.
Yes.
So last night the kids all went to a play and I said no because we were behind on chores, and I've said yes way too much lately that we are way behind on chores. and kids have been grumpy because they've been staying up late. And I felt bad because I want to say yes more. I want to let them go and do fun things and make memories. But it's gross. And they have responsibilities and they need to keep up on it. And so,
well, just so you know, we were sitting in the parking lot at 9:50 p.m. and I was like, this is stupid. I want to be in my bed.
I hate this so much. But so what has it been like having been in a relationship for over a year now with somebody who sets and respects boundaries in a romantic relationship? Because as much as we keep saying we would love to be lesbians, it's not a thing. It's not a thing we can do.
It has been different from what I expected.
Oh, how so?
Because
what did you expect? I should start with that. What did you expect?
Okay. I expected that it was going to be this, like, I'm going to show up as this, like, badass, strong, empowered woman, and I am going to set my boundaries, and I am going to hold them.
I see you there with a sword drawing this line in the dirt.
Yes.
Do not cross this or I will cut you.
That's exactly what I had in my mind.
Perfect. Like in your Wonder Woman outfit.
Yes. This is what I was thinking, right? And it's
so what does it look like?
It's so not that. I think in the year and a half that we've been together, we've maybe had two things where...
Two sword conversations.
Two sword conversations.
That's what we're going to call that. Julia, I'm dating this guy. We had a sword conversation today. Oh, tell me. Sorry.
We're going to start using that with the kids. We got to have a sword conversation. Sit down.
The thing is, I have all boys.
Family sword meeting.
My kids are all going to show up with swords. We're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So you've had two sword conversations in the year and a half you've been together.
Yeah, and we only had two. And I don't know, I just expected it to be bigger and heavier and longer. And when in reality it was... I need you not to say that, or I need you not to use this word because it is a red hot button trigger for me, and I need you not to ever touch that button again.
And how has it responded? Does he then wait till later and then use it again soon? Go, remember how you said you don't like this word? Shabam! Does he do that?
No.
What?
He's like, okay. And I'm like, that's
it.
That's it? Is the conversation over?
You're like, I put on my breastplate for nothing.
For nothing? That just okay. Just okay. I'll respect that. No problem. No worries. That's it? Did we do it right?
Did we do it right? Check the handbook.
Right?
Are we toxic?
It's been awesome. It's been great. It's been empowering, and it has also allowed me to sit more in my feminine. I don't have to show up with my Wonder Woman suit and sword and costume, and he makes it a safe place to where I can set a boundary, and vice versa, right? There are things that he has brought in that I know is a hot topic or a hot button for him, and I'm going, don't touch that.
Like hiding his toothbrush. The kids hid his toothbrush, and he did not like it.
He did not.
He has a very special attachment to his toothbrush. Which I respect. It's fine. We're not teasing. I'm just saying.
Well, there's good reason for that because my kids have definitely done things with toothbrushes.
Right. No, like I said, there's zero judgment
not
here.
Not to his toothbrush, to be specific, because he listens to this.
Sorry, that's not... He's like, I knew it. Thought it tasted weird. I love that. I love watching you guys and hearing the stories of those setting boundaries and hearing like we joke about it, but that's how our conversations are. You're like, oh my gosh, guess what? And I'm like, what? You're like, I said this thing and he said, okay. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. And it gets me excited to explore my wants and needs and to be in a relationship to set boundaries and watch how my partner's going to respond to that and learn how to love me. Because there's like a saying that goes around that's like, I don't want to have to teach somebody to love me. And I'm going, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yes.
How is anybody going to know how to love you?
Yes.
You have to teach them, but you also have to learn how to do that yourself, which I love is part of getting to know you, like us as individuals and being alone for as long as we were, learning how to love ourselves. Okay, this is how I want to be loved.
And one thing I did not expect from it was that it helps me to still keep a healthy form of independence within a relationship.
Explain that a little bit.
That was something that I was really concerned about because in my marriage, I was codependent on everything. Everything was based off of him. Yeah. What I wore, what I ate, everything was based off that, right? And then I got divorced and I swung way the opposite, weird, I swung way the opposite way of,
Screw you.
I'm an independent badass and I can do everything all the time and I don't need anyone.
Right.
And now being in a healthy relationship, I'm learning that he's there to help, and we can be together without being codependent, but still have our own forms of independence at the same time. I don't feel codependent on him for everything, right? I still have my own autonomy in all of this, and that feels good. And that was one of my biggest things. When I get into a relationship again, I still need to have some of my independence, in this, not that this really applies to this episode, but that's a huge part, and I don't ever want to change my last name again. I want to have some form of, I'm Julia before anything else, before mom, before girlfriend, before anything else, I'm still Julia.
Yeah.
And together we can be awesome, but I'm still important apart from that too.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So setting boundaries has helped me with that too.
Yeah. So will you read that meme that you sent me that kind of sparked this whole idea that this was the topic that we need to talk about?
Yes.
Did you find the funny one or just the serious one?
I did not find the funny one.
We'll talk about the funny one in a second.
Oh, I do. I have one funny one.
Okay. Do the funny one first.
It says, y'all be like, I'm entering my villain era. It's just you asserting boundaries.
That's what it feels like. Sometimes that's what it feels like. I'm such a bitch. And I'm like, oh no,
No, you're just honoring yourself.
And okay, so read the other one, because I want to kind of wrap up with some ideas that I have of why, like just our general ideas of boundaries.
Okay, this one says, when someone expresses a boundary to me, I say thank you for being authentic, vulnerable, and transparent. Thank you for modeling personal integrity. Thank you for helping me to understand how to love and care for you. Thank you for this opportunity to grow in intimacy.
What I love about that, because you sent that to me over Instagram, and it was attached to some, I'm assuming, a boundary we were setting with each other that we didn't even know we were setting. But just this idea of, as I am becoming less people-pleasing and less codependent and more of an individual and loving Gina and watching you do the same, how much I love when you set boundaries, so I know how to show up for you. So I know how to love you, because that is all I want to do. I want to show up and love you. And I'm finding that with all of my relationships with the people that I have. What I desire is to show up and love them the way that they are going to receive that. And that is what I'm excited about with learning, with my future relationships with anybody, and learning about boundaries, is that's what that does. By you being brave enough to set boundaries and to learn about yourself and to have your individualness, I know how to show up and be loving towards you. I don't have to be insecure. I don't have to question, and I don't have to worry that I'm offending you.
Right.
Because I think even just over the last few weeks, we were talking about something. I was like, oh wait, me doing this, does that offend you? I didn't even think about that. You're like, no, not. Because I know you're going to voice it. You're going to say, oh, you know what? This makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
Knowing and trusting that people like Shirley are going to come to me and say, this doesn't work for our relationship. I now have zero holdback on me being my authentic self and showing up and loving these people in my life authentically for them. And that just, there's just, how much more Christ-like can you get than to show up and love people? And so that's what I'm loving about boundaries. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about my most favorite relationships, my most intimate relationships, the ones who I am closest to, it's the ones that I have boundaries with.
Yeah. It's not scary. It's beautiful, and it's good. And it sets a great foundation for that to be a relationship to have that's going to last a long time.
Absolutely. So I think we need to change the verbiage around boundaries. They're not big and hard and scary and heavy. Boundaries are good. They're healthy. They teach you how to love people.
Because I think that's when you're a good person and you want to love people and you don't know how to do it, that's what's scary. Not knowing how to show up for somebody is scary. But going, I know exactly how to show up for you, and I'm so excited to watch you be happy because I'm awesome.
Yes.
So I'm so grateful for the learning, the time that I have taken to partner with God, to learn, and to be open to God bringing people into my life where I get to experience this boundary setting. And I love this journey, and I love that He's teaching me in ways that aren't big and heavy, because I think so many times we think that healing has to be big, dark, heavy, and we are sitting here trying to figure out what boundaries we've set and we can't figure them out. And we're realizing we do all the time.
Right.
All the time we're setting boundaries and it doesn't feel heavy. And that was such an easy lesson that we learned. And I'm so grateful for easy lessons.
Amen. I am incredibly grateful for being able to experience setting boundaries in a healthy relationship with my boyfriend. It has been so just another part of a beautiful healing experience when two mature adults come together and form just this raw, authentic relationship, an intimacy of knowing one another, knowing each other's hearts. It's incredible. And I'm so thankful that I get to experience that.
I'm grateful you get to do that too.
Yours is coming.
I know.
It might not be as good as me, but he's coming.
No one's as good as you. It's fine.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Unfiltered Summit Sisters.
Come join us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to get a sneak peek into our lives.
It's beautiful, chaotic, crazy, and fun.
What else would you expect raising 10 kids?
All the links you need are in the show notes.
See you next week.